All right, in this video, I'm going to break down what emergency fund is and the exact formula to calculate it. The thing about the formula is there's a couple variables, but let's get right into the formula. Let's not waste any time. The formula for calculating your emergency fund is pretty simple. Your emergency fund is going to equal your monthly expenses. So whatever you spend a month, your monthly burn, and I'm talking for like your bills, if you got a car payment, housing, utilities, food, transportation, healthcare, debt, if you have any debt, that's going to give you an idea of your total monthly expenses. The next thing you do is you just take that number and you multiply it by a set number of months. Now, the set number of months is another variable. It's going to kind of depend on like the stability of your job. Typically, people go for 3 to 6 months of living expenses. So what I would say is if you're young and you don't have a family yet, you don't have people relying on you, you could probably go with the lower end of that number, maybe 3-4 months. If you have a family and you have a little bit more of a volatile job, you might want to aim for even more, up to maybe 12 months. It's going to depend on your job stability as well. So stable jobs, people say about 3 months. For volatile jobs that are like a single income household, and maybe you got some kids that are dependent on you, you're probably going to want to have a little bit higher range there, maybe 6 to 9 months. And then if you're self-employed, you might want to go up to 12 months. It's really how much risk you want to take and how much cash you want set aside. Now, a good rule of thumb is if you don't have an emergency fund, I'd call it like the pre-emergency fund is just get $1,000, $1,000 to $2,000. Get this set aside. You can have it in your bank account, but it's a little bit better if it's in a high yield savings account. You want to just put this money somewhere where you're not going to touch it. In a high yield savings account, you're going to get around maybe 3 to maybe 4% interest right now. So that's pretty good. That's better than it just sitting in your bank account. And then you won't be as tempted to spend it if it's in another account and you have to move it over. But the formula is pretty simple. You got to figure out what your monthly expenses are. So first of all, how you figure that out, what I would do is I'd go to my bank statements and see what I'm spending on every month and maybe go back 3 months and like calculate the last 3 months and then kind of do my averages there and do like the average of 3 months. And there's going to be some variability. There's going to be groceries. You're not going to use all the groceries every month. That's why I think finding an average of the last 3 months is the easiest way to do it. And for me, I would just go through my bank statements, whatever I spent on like my debit card or my credit card or whatever, and just add it up, break out the pen and paper, break out the abacus, whatever you need to do to get this number. This is, in my opinion, this is the hardest part, is figuring out your total monthly expenses. Once you got that figured out, the rest is more of like the time, and that's going to depend on your personal situation and how much risk you want to take. The good thing about having an emergency fund is it's not like, how can I explain this? You get like this absolute peace of mind once you have an emergency fund. It's like you're not worried about little mundane things happening. You're not as stressed about making rent in your bills because you have an emergency fund. If something happens at your job or you end up a little bit behind, now you got something to fall back on. And you just sleep better at night when you have an emergency fund. A lot of financial advisors and stuff you read online, advice about money, will recommend having an emergency fund before you start investing. And I definitely agree with that. I think having an emergency fund, just the peace of mind you get from it alone is like a total game changer. And I remember when I was in my sales job, I had my car and I had bought used tires about maybe 2 years before. And I was on my way to work one day and I almost got to work, and then there was like a big pop. And at first I wasn't sure what happened, but I thought maybe I hit something on the road, and I was really close to work and I was running late. So I just got to work. And then later in the day, I checked on my car and I could tell it was leaning. And that's when I realized, oh man, I popped a tire. But I ended up just buying 4 new tires because I had an emergency fund set aside. It didn't set me back much. And it wasn't like it sucked. I think I spent like almost $700. I bought like some cheap new tires, but I got 4 new tires. I got them put on and everything for $700. And it just, knowing I had that emergency fund and it was there, and that's why I had it there, it didn't sting as much. Like it just wasn't a big deal really. And I ended up making more money that week anyways, enough to reimburse that $700 easily. So it was like, it was just kind of a blessing. Having that emergency fund just gives you peace of mind. And one of my friends, he really went through it recently. This guy, he got hit with bad luck twice, every day of the week, twice on Sunday. And first of all, he lost his job. First of all, before that, thankfully, he had an emergency fund. He had money set aside. He was doing pretty well with his job. He put some money aside. I don't think he even knew what an emergency fund was, but he just had saved up some money. So he had some money set aside. But he lost his job out on like a random whim. It wasn't really anything particular. He just lost his job. And now they offered to hire him back, actually, but that's a different story. He lost his job. So he had no income coming in. It took him about 3 months to find a new job. The job market is crazy right now. Like finding a job now it seems like crazy. Like you just fill out like 100 applications to maybe get one call. You got to go a bunch of places. Some of these, like this is the same friend who he went to a job interview and they told him to come back the next day. And when he came back the next day, no one was there. Like they just told him to come in on a day. They had no one there at the office. And he had to find out from the building next door that, oh yeah, no one's there on Thursdays. So he drove an hour and a half to this place too. He got a job finally. And now he's working an hour and a half from his house. We live in a smaller town and sometimes that's what you got to do. But anyways, he lost his job. He had got a ticket for his car for his window tint. He got a ticket for his dog, that his dog got in a fight with another dog and the other dog was seriously injured. And it wasn't his fault, but for some reason he got a ticket for that. And this all happened within like maybe 2 weeks. And then he ended up he got a blowout on one of his tires as well. So he had 2 tickets, lost his job, blew out one of his tires. By the time the blowout came like a couple weeks later, but this was all within like a span of maybe a month, 2 months. If he wouldn't have had that emergency fund, he would have been SOL. He would have been running up credit cards or going to payday loans or something crazy, or just not been able to pay these bills and ended up with something more serious. Thankfully, he had some money set aside, so he was able to get the tires fixed, get the bills paid, handle those tickets. But your emergency fund is really important. And when you're calculating it, I like peace of mind. So for me, I got like 10 to 12 months. That's kind of where I keep my emergency fund is in that time frame. I'm currently self-employed, so I think I have a little more risk. I don't have a family yet, but plan to one day. So I think 10 to 12 months is good. And then one more thing I didn't touch on the emergency fund is this is something you want to come back and adjust every, maybe I would say 6 months to a year, maybe every quarter. I would readjust it. And a lot of people don't talk about readjusting your emergency fund. They kind of just like put the money aside and then forget about it. But pretty much I got like at least 10 grand set aside, closer to 15, but I'd say 10's the emergency. And what this is for is like, it's for just emergencies. This isn't a down payment for a house. This isn't for, I want to go get some fancy toy or boat or something like that. I don't really spend money like that anyways. But the reason you want to adjust it is because you want to adjust for inflation, and then you want to adjust if you do have some lifestyle creep. If you start spending a little bit more, maybe your rent went up. Like it's good to touch base on your emergency fund I would say at least every 6 months, and calculate in expenses, calculate what, like right now gas has gone up like crazy. Like I think I was spending $60 a tank. Now I'm spending $75. So it'd probably be a good idea to go look through my emergency fund and recalculate, readjust, put some more savings aside. Another good thing about the emergency fund is you do end up getting a little bit of interest if you have it in a high yield savings account. I have most of my emergency fund in a high yield savings account. I have a little bit in SGov, which is a government bond ETF that pays out every month. And it's like a short-term government bond, but that gets me a little bit higher interest. I'm talking like maybe, I think it's like 4.1 right now. Whereas my high yield savings, I think that's closer to like 3.5. So I spread a little bit of money between those two. Most of my emergency fund, though, is just sitting in that high yield savings. And my plan is just to never need it. But if something happens, God forbid, I need some new tires, a medical expense comes up, some sort of just emergency, having that monthly, that burn money there for emergencies gives you such a peace of mind. You're just able to just focus better. You're not stressed. Like I had a coworker who used to be pretty much month to month on paychecks. And there were sometimes when he couldn't pay his rent and he'd have to go down to like Western Union and try to get a payday loan or just something like this. And then the other thing was like sometimes he'd be trying to ask his mom for money, and like you could tell when he was short on money because he was a different person. There's actually a study I read recently when you're stressed about money, your IQ actually drops. Like I think it's like almost 20 points. So you're putting yourself at a lower baseline level of like just thinking and functioning if you don't have some money set aside. And I know that's easier said than done, especially in this economy. Times are rough right now, but I'm telling you, start with 1,000 at least. Put 1,000 away, bump it up to 2,000, and then use this formula to calculate your emergency fund. It's your monthly expenses, and then you just take that number and you times it by a number of months. If you're a single guy in your 20s, I think that's what most of my analytics are showing. 6 months, 8 months, that's probably pretty good. Depends on how much risk you want to have, but this is a good starting place. Get that emergency fund. Once you get that emergency fund, it depends on your situation, but I think starting to invest would be a good place. You can look at different investment options. I really like the Roth. And if you made it this far, I appreciate you for tuning in. If you haven't subscribed already, subscribe, like the video, leave a comment. If you got any tips for anyone else, I'd love to hear them in the comments. I'd love to hear your feedback. Thanks.